Hello, everyone. It's good to see so many of you here already. We'll begin with the verse of the Quesa. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Gata of Atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us now. Fragrance of this incense fills our room, protects and guards our minds from wrong thinking. Fragrance of this incense unites us with precepts, concentration, and insight. We offer it for all beings. Homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I shall become one with the Buddha. I resolve that I shall each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I shall become one with the Dharma. The gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for guidance. I shall become one with the Sangha. In the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge myself to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. Metta prayer. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. So we have guided meditation tonight. I'm going to do the guardian meditations. So many of you have done these with me already, maybe all of you. These are good to learn. You can abbreviate them, use them for about 5 minutes or so at the beginning of your regular meditation to establish your intention. So, I live down the street. Hey, sorry. It's interesting, COVID, and doing things remote. There's an elementary school that way and a couple of blocks that way, but it's down there, and there's been a steady stream of there must be an event there tonight, sort of an end of school year celebration thing. And so there's been a lot of activity, and I think it's kind of freaking out the dogs. There's all these kids walking by the house, and a lot of cars, and golf carts, things like that. So I apologize for any disturbances, but that's what's going on. Anyway, guardian meditations. So these are good to learn. I spend a little bit more time on them when I guide them than you need to do when you do on your own. 4 or 5 minutes at the beginning of a meditation just to establish your intentions. It just kind of helps you get your mind steered in the right direction. So it'll probably take about 15 minutes when we do it tonight. take some deep breaths. Let your abdominal muscles be nice and relaxed so your diaphragm can expand and contract smoothly, freely. And go ahead and let your attention settle on your breath, especially the out breath. Maybe making those a little bit longer than normal. And the first of the guardians is Metta Bhavana, cultivating goodwill. May I be happy. And if you've been working with Metta Bhavana for a while, when you start to think that thought, may I be happy, you'll have this feeling of well-being arise in your heart. And just go ahead and let that happen. Just kind of let it spread through your body. May I be happy. May I be free from animosity. And use that as a reminder to let go of any ill will that's present now or that arises as you meditate. That's how we free ourselves from things, as they arise and we let them go. May I be free from stress and affliction. And the same process, anything that comes into your awareness, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, no need to hang on to it, no need to push it away. Just don't engage. Let it go or let it be. Free from stress and affliction. May I look after myself with ease. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from animosity. May all beings be free from stress and affliction. May all beings look after themselves with ease. we'll recollect the Buddha. Call to mind our practice, the example of the Buddha, the virtues that he represents: wisdom, compassion, purity. If we want to be free like he became free, we want to transcend the cycle of coming and going from stress and difficulties. We cultivate wisdom, the understanding what causes suffering and how to end it. Compassion, our recognition that our practice is for the benefit of all beings, our desire to free all beings from suffering. And purity, recognizing when our actions or intentions arise from greed, hatred, or delusion, noticing that and letting it go. And calling to mind the Dharma, the path of practice, our refuge, the place we return to when we're experiencing difficulties. The path is always there for us. It won't lead us astray. Even when it's difficult, the Dharma leads away from suffering and toward happiness. And recollecting the Sangha, the spiritual community, those who have practiced and realized what we want to realize, made these teachings available to us, and also the community we practice with that supports us in our practice. And so what do we have to work with? We have the body sitting here breathing. In this moment, in this place, and there are traditional phrases that go with this, but I think probably the most helpful thing to do at this point in your meditation is just to scan the body. Be grounded in the here and now, aware of what's going on here, releasing any tension, accepting everything else as it is. And this body won't last forever. And it's subject to illness and to aging. It's what we have. And so let's remember that life and death are important. And let that encourage us to practice, bring ourselves closer to that wisdom, compassion, serenity. Each of us must strive to awaken. Don't squander this moment. And with this in our hearts, just turn your attention to your breath. Know when you're breathing in, know when you're breathing out. Counting your breaths as if you need to, or just resting your awareness gently but firmly on the in breath and out breath. The bell will ring twice to end the meditation. When it rings the first time, bring your hands together in front of your heart, acknowledging your oneness with your practice. And when it rings the second time, bow. And when we do sitting bows, we do about a 45-degree bow off of the vertical from the waist. And when we're bowing, we're acknowledging really our gratitude to our practice, our gratitude to the teachers and communities that made the practice available to us. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now, and offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma and training the mind. Great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Sakyamuni Buddha, the all pervading and everlasting three treasures, to the 16 guardians and all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of the Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved and the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. May their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for those living in oppression, for all who are imprisoned who should be free, for all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophe, man-made or natural. We pray for the health and well-being of those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, all those working toward the healing of those afflictions. We pray for any members of our congregation, friends, and loved ones suffering from illness and any grieving for losses. We send loving thoughts their way. May they all be serene through all their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katang punya phalang mahang sabe bhagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings that spring from the good we have done. Maybe we should say Namo Amida Butsu 3 times since we're starting on Pure Land practice. I don't know how many of you are aware of this if you go to White Sands, that at the end of the prayers that the Sukkos or Quincy say at the end of the chanting session, you know you're getting ready to stand up and do the bows when they say Namo Amida Phat, which I don't do very well, but that's kind of what they do. That's Namo Amida Butsu, and only in Vietnamese, Namo Amida Phat. So that's how they end their prayers. I don't know what else they're saying. My Vietnamese is very limited. So let me move a little closer. So how is everybody? How many of you are there? There's 9 right now. That's good. So it's Pride Month. That just started yesterday. And so happy Pride Month to those of you who observe that. You know, talk about that very often because a couple of reasons. I generally avoid. Nah, that's not true. Honestly, it just doesn't come up too much. But once in a while, somebody will ask me about Buddhism and, you know, gender-related issues, sexuality issues, and that sort of stuff. And thankfully, you know, in terms of what the Buddha said, there's really not much to say. I've never seen anything in Buddhism, there are multiple canons, multiple collections of scriptures, depending on what school of Buddhism you're talking about, what culture you're in, whether it's Theravada Buddhism or Mahayana Buddhism and all that. And so I'm probably most familiar with the Pali Canon, which is Theravada, and with the writings of some Zen, you know, some of the people who really kind of laid the foundations for Zen. But also a lot of the Mahayana scriptures, like the Pure Land Sutras, Lotus Sutra, things like that. And honestly, there's just not much there about sexuality issues, you know. once, so I was told this story like third hand, probably, that there was someone who had gone to White Sands and who had been told by someone who at White Sands that, the Buddha didn't like gay people. And this individual who was told this happened to be gay, a gay male. And I don't know who told him. And so that person had not returned. And I told the person who told me this, go tell him to talk to me. And tell the person who told him that to come talk to me. Because it just ain't there. Now, there are, so if you look at the Pali Canon, which is where all of the foundation teachings of Buddhism are, there's sort of three baskets. It's called baskets, Pitaka basket, Sutta. There's the Sutta Pitaka and the Vinaya Pitaka and the Abhidhamma. 3 baskets. So the suttas, sutras in Pali, are the discourses. These are talks that the Buddha gave, conversations the Buddha had, or some of his key followers, people like that. They're contemporary to him or shortly after his death. I can't say I've read it all, but I've read a substantial amount of it. And I've searched to see what he said on the subject. And it's not there. There's nothing that says, this. Now, when you get to the Vinaya Pitaka, that's the rules for the monastics, rules for monks. There's a lot of, you can't do this. But monks were celibate. Monks in the Buddhist day were celibate. Most monks today are. If you're not ordained in one of the Japanese orders or one of the Korean orders, if you're ordained, you're probably celibate. And so there was a lot of, no, you can't do that either stuff. But that was true for heterosexual activity also. In the Abhidhamma, which are the commentaries on the sutras, so these things, for the most part, appeared after the Buddha's death. And there are some things that are written about that are not about specific acts, but sort of categories of people that were defined more or less by gender and sexuality. And it's real vague. So and the reality is that most Asian cultures are a lot more open-minded about that sort of stuff than most Western cultures, European cultures. And so that's probably why it just wasn't a big deal. And especially to the Buddha, who was mostly concerned with keeping monks in line, So there is a precept. It says, when you take the 5 precepts, you vow to refrain from, usually described as illicit sex or wrong sex or harmful sex. The Buddha only there's a kind of a fairly short explanation of what that means. And basically it has to do with what sort of women to keep away from. And it was, underage married women. And that's pretty much it. So it just, not a lot of attention paid to it. So there are cultures that are largely Buddhist that are probably very conservative. And there are cultures that are largely Buddhist that are quite patriarchal. And so the more difficult conversations I have are with women who say, how come there's not more women in leadership in Buddhism and stuff? And there is some scriptural stuff there that suggests that women were seen as, not held in the same regard as males. But again, the cultures were patriarchal. And so And this has changed a lot. And the Buddha said multiple occasions that women can become enlightened just like men. And some of the great writers on Buddhism, including Dogen Zenji, who founded Soto Zen in Japan, who were very much egalitarian and said, I guess there was a thing about not, when he was around, about not bowing to, for men not bowing to females. And he said, why? Space is space. Form is form. The elements are the elements. Doesn't matter what gender you are. Why wouldn't you do that? So, and in Buddhism in the U.S., American forms and styles of Buddhism, Soto Zen is established in the U.S. and stuff like that, are very inclusive. And there's really nothing scriptural that says that there's anything wrong with being inclusive. There's just not, and when you find some little corner of the Lotus Sutra that seems to suggest that for a woman to become enlightened, she had to be reborn a male first or something. There's scholarship that says that's probably added later. And, it's such a tiny thing in the context of everything that it's just not significant. What is significant is that we treat all beings with compassion. There are things the Buddha said that mattered a whole lot. There are things the Buddha said that probably happened within the context of a culture and probably were changed and adapted because, he didn't write anything down. Unfortunately, it was all written down hundreds of years after he passed away. And so we know what endured and stuff like that. And we know that, people were trying to make the Sangha seem legit in the context of the rest of society and stuff like that. But we know that the Buddha said that suffering is caused by the way the mind engages with what happens and with not understanding what leads to freedom and what leads to suffering. And that our job as Buddhists is to do what leads away from suffering and toward freedom. Everything else is really pretty, it either supports that or it's, extraneous stuff, honestly. So anyway, compassion is for everyone. And it doesn't matter what color you are, what gender you are, or whether you're binary or non-binary, it doesn't matter. You can become enlightened. All human beings have that capacity. All beings have Buddha nature. Human beings are unique in that we're in this place where we recognize it and we can practice and we can free ourselves. And we can support one another in their practice and help them become freed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some Dharma Gates, and then I probably won't talk about the Dharma. This is really a beautiful thing, this 100-day Dharma Gates translation from Dogen. And maybe I'll post it somewhere later, a link to it, so you can look at it, because it really is remarkable. But kind of related to this concept, to this topic that I've been talking about. So there's the second section of Dharma Gates have to do with purity of body, speech, and mind. And then it says, being proper in our bodily behavior is a gate to what the Dharma illumines. For due to that, the actions of our body, speech, and mind are pure. Being pure in our speech is a gate to what the Dharma illumines, for it eradicates the four evil attitudes associated with beings in the hells, asuras, hungry ghosts, and beasts. Being pure in our intentions is a gate to what the Dharma illumines, for this eradicates the three poisons of greed, anger, and delusion. So I used this word purity before when I was leading you through the guardian meditations. One of the virtues of the Buddha was wisdom, like supreme wisdom, like prajna wisdom, which is really understanding the nature of reality. and compassion, really wanting to provide this path for liberation for all beings so nobody has to suffer. And purity, the actions of body, speech, and mind coming from intentions that are free from anything harmful, from any stained actions, the residue of negative karma, things like that. So this kind of digs into this purity idea a little bit, in a way that I think can be clarifying if we unpack it a little bit. So being proper in our bodily behavior is a gate to what the Dharma illumines. For due to that, our actions of body, speech, and mind are pure. So when it says actions of body, speech, and mind, we think as Westerners, typically we think of actions as things you do. If I think about punching you in the nose, it doesn't count. It only counts if I punch you in the nose. In Buddhism, it's a little bit different, right? An action of body is pretty obvious. If I do it physically, then that's an action of body. An action of speech is also fairly obvious. If I threaten to hit you in the nose, or I tell you I want to hit you in the nose, that's a harmful action of speech. Even though your nose is uninjured, right? It's still harsh speech. I'm still trying to hurt you with words. Actions of mind, that's kind of subtle. So if a thought arises, I'd like to punch that guy in the nose. That's not an action. That's a thought that has arisen. If the thought arises and then I go, oh yeah, man, that would be so good. Oh, I'd love that. And so you start imagining punching the guy in the nose and think about all the reasons you're justified to punch the guy in the nose. That's action. That's where you're willfully thinking. That's an action of mind, is willful thought, not just a thought arising, but a willful thought. And so when we're proper in our bodily behavior, then basically what that means is that we're following guidelines that we know are in alignment with non-harmful behavior. So thoughts arise, impulses arise, those things arise. If we don't engage in them, if we let them go, then that's actually how we purify body, speech, and mind. I've talked about quitting smoking before, and it's a perfect analogy, I think, because if you ever quit smoking, and hopefully you've never started, if you started, you'll quit, hopefully, but you get a lot of cravings, a lot of impulses. As soon as you act, you've perpetuated the craving. You've not only perpetuated the habit, you've perpetuated the craving. If you let the craving go, then the cravings over time start to extinguish. When the mind learns that you're not going to react to this, then the cravings become less often. And so I'll still get that thought once in a while, boy, it'd be nice to smoke a cigarette. I haven't smoked in 16 years, something like that. But every once in a while, I think that thought will just come up. Don't do anything to get it. It just comes up. Doesn't make me a smoker, right? Because I go, oh, that was interesting. I had that craving. Thought I was done with those. And that's that, right? So, and as a result, probably if I continued to smoke, I'd probably have COPD now. But because I don't have the physical responses for that. So when it comes to dealing with those things that trigger you in day-to-day life, the person at work who's a pain in the butt to be around, or all those things, when those cravings arise, don't just not super glue their desk drawer shut. I don't know why I thought of that. My mind goes weird places sometimes. Don't just, run off to your boss and lie about how bad they are or whatever. Also, cut those things off in your mind, right? The thoughts arise. Yeah, okay, the guy's an SOB. Stop right there. That's as far as you got to go. Okay. I mean, you don't have to go there, but that thought has arisen. You just let it go. And so being proper, in other words, you know what is really acceptable. You know what is a compassionate way to act toward this person. So do that, even if you don't feel it, even if it doesn't align with your thoughts, because that way, over time, your practice will purify the actions of body, speech, and mind. Being pure. Oh, by the way, so part of proper behavior is maintaining the precepts. You know, if you become a Buddhist, you know, you take the 5 training rules. They're not commandments, they're training rules. That's what this means. I'm practicing not causing physical harm. I'm practicing not stealing. I'm practicing not engaging in harmful speech. I'm practicing not engaging in harmful sexual activity. And I just said, you know, basically that means not doing things that cause harm to others. And I'm practicing not intoxicating my mind to the point that I forget those other things, right? I'm not compromising my mindfulness so that I forget to act in a non-harmful way. Also, though, in the context of our religious, our services here, you know, here online, but also here at White Sands or here, you know, wherever you go for practice, there's ritual behavior. I told you about that today. Bow, you know, bring your hands together for about chin height, bow from the waist about 45 degrees. It's not, right? Because when we practice these things, we're really practicing, we have defined behaviors that unify us as a spiritual community. Now, it's pretty arbitrary, right? This is traditional. It's traditional because it comes from Asia, you know, and the Buddha was Asian, and it's been picked up from India and into China and Japan and all those places that this is what we do. And there are schools of Buddhism where they do that differently, and cultures where, you know, people bow at different depths depending on their relation to one another and stuff. So it's pretty arbitrary. But when we practice it, when we make it a mindfulness practice, and we're saying, we're recognizing this is the value of this, is we're doing this as a community, then that helps make us more attuned spiritually, for lack of a better term, to why we're practicing, to what we're doing with our practice, to the kind of person we're trying to become. And so that's also a gate, proper behavior. Right? Being respectful as a practice helps us preserve that. I can be respectful to you whether I agree with any of your political positions or not, whether I like your hairstyle or not. Yet, it doesn't matter. I can still be respectful toward you. And so one of the best things about Buddhism, I think, is that it sort of formalizes respect. Now, again, it'll be a little different if you're in a Thai temple versus a Vietnamese temple versus an American, you know, Zen community or whatever. What is respectful is going to, in terms of the outward expression of that, it's going to change a little bit. But that's okay, because once you know what the rules are, once you know what is seen as respectful, then that's how you can act. And that, again, that is a way of practicing freeing our body's speech and mind from harmfulness. It's just a good habit and a good practice, a very good practice. So when you walk into the temple, bow a little bit. You could practice this even virtually. When you get ready to sit down and you know, join these services here, just go ahead and bow. You've entered a sacred space. I was thinking about this today when I lit the incense, and I was saying the incense offering, this, you know, that unites us. Okay, it unites us more metaphorically than physically. You don't smell my incense. You could light your own, right? And we're still sharing that experience. Even if you're watching this tomorrow, you could still light incense. You're still sharing that experience with me. But even if you don't have incense, or you live with somebody who's allergic and so you can't do it, or whatever, that's okay. Still recognize that when we offer this incense, that's something that's bringing us together. It's a show of respect for the Buddha, and it's a show of unity for us. It's a way we can do this together. Um, so, being pure in our speech is a gate to what the Dharma illumines, for it eradicates the four evil attitudes associated with beings in hells, asuras, hungry ghosts, and beasts. There's a whole other talk in that. Maybe I'll unpack that completely one time. But so hungry ghosts are basically people who engage in craving behavior. They indulge their cravings all the time. They're addicts and things like that. Those are hungry ghosts. Asuras are people who engage in anger all the time. It's interesting. Look up asuras sometimes and see what you find. It's really some interesting stuff. And the meaning has kind of evolved and mutated over the years. It kind of came out of ancient Indian cosmology and it sort of changed over time. But these are sort of like, if devas are angels, asuras are demons, basically. Don't worry about whether there really are such a thing. All right, treat it as a metaphor. That's fine. But if you think about, if you took all of your anger and made a being out of it, what would that look like? It would probably be a big, ugly thing that's not very pleasant, that kind of slinks around in the corner and then yells and throws something or whatever. It would not be an attractive being, and that's an asura. Okay. Beasts. So if you want to not be reborn an animal, maintain the 5 precepts. That's my very first serious teacher, the first one that I made a real connection to 20 years ago or thereabouts. That's like the first thing he taught me. We talked about the precepts. He said, if you don't want to be born an animal, keep the 5 precepts, and that'll do it, right? Because animals, they don't have that kind of morality. They're actually probably more moral than we think, but in their own context. But so don't harm, don't kill, don't steal, don't engage in harmful speech, don't bark at people, don't engage in harmful sex, don't get drunk, or at least not to the point that you screw up. And then you won't be an animal, you won't be a beast, you'll be a human, at least be reborn a human. Hells are people who indulge in just generally evil. It's basically by being mindless, not thinking at all about the consequences your actions had. If you look at all of the harm that you've done, anytime you weren't paying attention to the effect that your actions had, and you had to live all of the harm, then that would be hell. That would be being reborn, being in hell. And then being pure in our intentions is a gate to the Dharma, because this eradicates the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and delusion. Now, here's an interesting thing there. That sounds like, oh, you got to get rid of greed, anger, and delusion, and then you can live your life. No. Screw up. Go about your life, do the best you can, screw up, and then go, okay, wait a minute, that didn't work out. Why not? And then look and go, well, you know what? Maybe that was motivated from a bad place. You don't have to second guess everything, every step you're going to make. You don't have to worry, am I doing this out of ego? Or, am I doing this out of greed? Am I whatever? Do the best you can. And then look and see as you're doing it, what effect are my actions having? The Buddha, there's a beautiful discourse between the Buddha and his son Rahula. And Rahula had apparently told a lie. And because the Buddha starts out by talking to him about how lying and how people who lie are not worth very much. And then he says, look, here's how you can tell if you're doing the right thing. You should ask yourself, this action of body, is it harmful to myself or others? And if it is, don't do it. This action of speech, this action of mind, same thing. Is it potentially harmful to myself or others? And if so, not do it. Don't do it. Is it non-harmful or helpful to myself or others? If it is, go ahead. You generally can gauge the purity of your intentions by the effect of your actions. Now, that doesn't mean you won't have accidents sometimes, because of course you will. But, you can kind of look and see, all right, where's this going? Is this going to potentially harm me or someone else? If so, maybe I should refrain from that. Maybe I should hold off on that. And then look and go, where's that coming from? So anyway, those are those Dharma Gates. And like I said, I thought it kind of followed out from the other topic. So, there's no, in Buddhism, there's no one thing that anybody says, no, you can't do that. There's no one category of stuff that anybody says, no, you can't do that. Even lying, the Buddha says wrong speech is lying, idle, or harsh speech. Well, you don't have to be 100% truthful if the truth might really hurt someone or hurt someone's feelings unnecessarily and that kind of thing. There are occasions when idle chatter really is helpful. There's work situation. You can't, you got to establish relationships with people. Sometimes just be careful about your idle chatter, that it's not time waster, or that you're not drifting off into some area that's potentially offensive or potentially harmful. Just be careful what you're saying. Harsh speech. If one of my dogs is trying to go after another dog or something like that, I'm going to yell at him. But be careful and look at the things that trigger you to do things that you later regret, and where are those things coming from? And the only way to purify your intentions is to make mistakes and then fix them. So anyway, it's almost 8:00. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I hope that this was helpful to you. We'll talk about something else next week. Don't forget, we start on the Pure Land Sutras tomorrow. If you're getting the emails, you should have gotten the link to the new Zoom link, and also the well, Janet, thank you for saying that. And I try. It's on the one hand, I really want this to be a respite from some forms of discourse that are way too common in our society. Not looking for ways to make people angry about something they weren't mad about when they got on. And give you a break from that, chance to be together and to be happy together. But real happiness doesn't come from avoiding everything. You got to have the difficult conversations sometimes. So thank you for that. I hope that this was helpful. All right. Anyway, let me know if you don't have the Zoom link, don't know how to access the PDF of the Pure Land Sutras or anything like that. Otherwise, I hope to see you tomorrow evening. Have a good night.